Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back, all you citizens of the world. It's live from the Heartland for the week of February 24th. And it gives me a lot of pleasure now to introduce a real activist out there doing good in the world, Tommy Carden of the Warehouse Workers for Justice. Good morning to you, Tommy.
Good morning, Michael. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to being here.
Well, it's good to have you. You know, this started off with our friend Peter Kuttner, who I go way back with, talking about there was going to be a workers' rights film festival, and they were going to show a film about the United Auto Workers from 1970, Black Auto Workers Against Racism, finally got the news, and he hooked me up with you, who are you're a guy who was real active in the labor movement and knows a little bit about this film festival. So let's start off with tell me a little bit about what's Warehouse Workers for Justice. I like that slogan, Warehouse Workers for Justice. Nothing moves without us. Together we can move toward a better future for all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm currently the Associate Director at Warehouse Workers for Justice, and WWJ is a worker center, and we support warehouse workers who are organizing in the Chicagoland area for better, higher paying jobs, jobs of dignity, jobs that are healthy, jobs that are safe. And we were founded in 2008 by the United Electrical Workers Union. Mainly focus on reaching out to and supporting workers, organizing in sort of the main logistics clusters in the area. So in suburban Cook County, and in Will County, in and around Joliet in particular.
Well, tell me a little bit about worker centers in general. They seem to be, they're not a union, but they're like setups that help organizers and give direction, et cetera. Give us a little overview of the general worker center movement.
Absolutely. Yeah. So worker centers are usually nonprofits. So Warehouse Workers for Justice is a nonprofit. And worker centers really started emerging in the 90s, early 2000s, to sort of reach out to, I would say, workers that historically unions weren't organizing. So workers of color, immigrants, workers who were maybe a bit harder to organize, like temporary workers. A lot of warehouse workers, work through temporary agencies. So worker centers, we get funding from a variety of sources that allow us to sort of reach workers in different ways, whether that's around, sealing and expungement of criminal records, different health and safety resources we offer, really allow us to go out into the community and start talking with workers about their rights and start giving workers the tools they need to start to make changes directly in their workplaces. So we sort of teach workers their rights and teach workers how to build early organization that, we hope eventually will move towards unionization efforts within these warehouses.
You got the Warehouse Workers for Justice. There's another group, Chicago Jobs with Justice, and they have a workers' right board. Get me straight on what this all is about.
A lot of organizations, a lot of acronyms. One of these days, I'm going to get that tattoo sleeve where I have all of these, labor organizations acronyms on there, so I can get it right myself. But right, so Chicago Jobs with Justice, right, is a coalition of unions and worker centers and other workers' rights organizations in Chicago. Been around for decades, and it sort of served as a bridge, right, to bridge community, right, to bridge sort of non-union workers' rights organizations like worker centers and unions, right, to sort of build that community, to sort of ensure that all these groups are building together towards a Chicago where there's greater worker justice, and there's a sort of an auxiliary board of Chicago Jobs of Justice called the Workers' Rights Board, and that's the organization that Peter is also a part of. And sort of at the end of last year, this group, we started talking about, what can we do to sort of pull others into this work? What can we do to sort of, have conversations with union members, maybe with workers who aren't part of unions, with union organizers, other labor activists? What can we do to sort of bring people together in conversation and to have some real conversations that connect with contemporary labor fights? And we really like the idea of a film series So, pulling some screenings that take the moment we've been doing mostly documentaries, but taking a labor film that's maybe rooted in a struggle from some years ago, and finding out how to kind of pull things right from that film, and find the points of relevancy for current struggles today. So the last film we had, we screened I Am Somebody and HSA Strike 75. And we screened both those films, and then we had a conversation with a number of different people. One person who was involved, in the actual strike in 75, Peter Orris. And we also had a conversation with people from INA, the Illinois Nurses Association, who are currently fighting against Howard Brown, and a long kind of protracted fight they've been having going on for the past few months. And found a lot of nuggets from that film that are really relevant to current healthcare worker fights today. So the second film of the series is coming up on Thursday, February 29th at 6 o'clock. And we're going to be screening Finally Got the News from 1970, which I'm very excited about.
Well, you bring back a lot of memories from the old days when I would join Community Union, and even with Rising Up Angry, we used to use film, to get people involved. I remember the old UE Hall, United Electrical Workers, and they were a real progressive union then, and I probably still are.
Sure.
You mentioned they helped get your worker center started. But we used to get these films from the Republic Steel strike and a bunch of things and show to people to try to, connect what happened in the past to the future with a vision toward the future.
Totally.
What I got on, I remember this film. I don't know if I saw it, but it was the Detroit League of Revolutionary Black Workers.
That's right.
They were trying to build an independent group within the United Auto Workers. And the documentary catalogs the action taken to address racism that they experienced and issues encountered by all workers on the assembly line and in the union halls. You're going to have an old pal, also a guest on this show, Floyd Webb, who it turns out is not only a filmmaker, but had been a member of the United Auto Workers. And he's going to be at the film showing and leading a discussion with the audience. I think you're going to have some auto workers there too from local 5551.
That's right. Yep. We expect to have 2 workers from 551 joining us as well.
How did you get Floyd involved? Did Peter do that, or did you meet him?
Yeah, I actually have not met Floyd yet, but I'm looking forward to. But Peter got Floyd involved. And I think something we're hoping to do is we're hoping to pull together perspectives like Floyd's, who can speak to sort of what it was like being with, working as a UAW member closer to when this documentary occurred or when it was made. And we're really excited also to have, hopefully, like I said, these 2 current UAW members from local 551 on the South Side to talk about their latest, their latest strike, right? The stand-up strike, which was certainly very consciously going back to the UAW's history, right? And sort of consciously pointing back to the sit-down strikes that were so instrumental in the 30s, but were also really, really instrumental for Black auto workers in the late 60s that this film portrays. So really excited to see how we can connect both of those and see, what did the stand-up strikers of 2023 learn from the workers from DRUM, the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement, and what can we learn from both of these efforts, right, in all of our future organizing efforts.
Well, Tommy, you have this labor film series is more than just the films that you had and the one that's coming up on February 29th. You want to give us a little hint about the other ones that are coming up?
Sure. So there's one. We're planning this by quarter. So we're in the sort of midst of planning sort of the next 3 months, April, May, and June. But I can speak to March. So March 19th, and I can send you this information. We're going to be screening Who Needs Sleep, the Haskell Wexler film from 2006. And we're going to be using that to talk about the conditions in the film industry for film crew workers. And we're going to be doing that screening and discussion at Columbia College.
Good. So let's just so people get it, this first film is going to be shown on February 29th, 6 to 8, Jobs with Justice at 333 South Ashland.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good. Well, let's move along a little bit here.
Sure.
I find it interesting, the whole idea of the warehouse workers and a union for these workers. So what's the status of warehouse workers in general and the union movement in general that you'd like to share?
Sure. So I think it's important to note that like warehousing work, right, is sort of it's where a lot of new jobs, right, are in the economy, especially in Northeast Illinois, in the Chicagoland area. It's some of the most precarious work, right? So like I mentioned sort of earlier, a lot of warehouse workers, they are temporary workers, right? They're working through an agency, very unstable. If workers, begin to organize, oftentimes they're retaliated against. So I actually see a lot of connections between the work of organizing warehouse workers, which is largely a workforce made up of workers of color. So a lot of Black workers, a lot of Latino workers, a lot of immigrant workers. So sort of as I've been sort of watching this film and thinking about this discussion we're going to have on the 29th about it, I think something that keeps on coming back to me is sort of right the necessity for workers to engage in aggressive struggle. At Warehouse Workers for Justice, we work with workers all the time who are having issues at work, and we walk them through how to file complaints with different state agencies or federal agencies. But we always stress to workers that it's really important that they come together with their coworkers and they try to make that change directly on the shop floor. So working with warehouse workers on petition efforts, doing delegations, marching on their boss. And there's a lot of really great connections, I feel like, in this film. But warehousing, right, and this is sort of the reason why Warehouse Workers for Justice was founded by the UE, the United Electrical Workers, is that warehousing needs to be here, right? The way that these supply chains are constructed, right? These companies need warehouses at the very specific points they're at. And we believe that if workers can get organized, they can have real leverage to gain some really, really important and crucial concessions to make this industry a much better industry to work in.
Tommy Carden, let me ask you, what's the status of the union movement within the warehouse? Are there any warehouse setups, any Amazon, et cetera, that actually have a union that's functioning?
So there is a union in Staten Island, in the New York facility that has been covered pretty extensively in the media.
Right.
So that is the only unionized Amazon in the country right now.
Wow.
They're engaged in a really hard contract fight now, right? And even though they won their union, it's going to take a lot more pressure on the company, right? Not just at that facility, but across the country and across the world, to ensure that the workers get that contract. Because we're seeing now is that Amazon is pulling out every trick in the book, every legal trick in the book to delay that and try to call the legal existence of that union into question. So only one so far.
How about what's the stat? How many Amazon warehouse situations do we have in the Chicagoland area?
There's close to 10 fulfillment centers in the area. There's many more delivery stations. So the way that Amazon works, right, is they have these big warehouses, right, where a lot of the product comes, and then they take that product to smaller delivery stations that there's many of them in Chicago, which is the last stop before the product gets to your house. I don't have a count of how many delivery stations, but
You
there's
have an idea how many workers are involved in all of these? How big a workforce they have?
They have each facility has about 2,000 workers. So
Wow.
they have I forget the exact numbers. It's in the tens of thousands. Amazon is the largest private employer in the Chicagoland area. They're the largest employer in Will County. So They,
And
yeah,
no union.
no union, not yet, not yet.
Yeah, there will be. Oh,
Absolutely.
that's something else. I didn't realize how, a lot of people have shifted to getting their stuff delivered to their door. I confess, that we use that here. You need something small. I mean, or small or large. It certainly is not going to go away. While we like people going to stores, on the ground, uh, this is a kind of the way to the future. And are most of those 2,000 workers at each facility coming in through a temp agency? And do those temp agencies get a cut like the old day labor hiring halls in Uptown used to get? You'd go to work and they'd take most of your money.
Yeah. So Amazon moved away from temp agencies a few years ago. So they all hire directly now. But what you're talking about is the story for most other warehouse workers, frankly, that we deal with, that they're going through the agencies and the agencies taking a cut. And the workers' pay is very low, no benefits, right? Amazon has moved away from that, but there's a lot of other issues associated with working at Amazon that are a bit unique to Amazon because of all the sophisticated technology they use that, while a lot of people might think that, oh, great, more technology will make the work better, it actually makes the work, it speeds up the work, right? So a lot of the tech that Amazon employs and the surveillance technology that they have in the facility, it serves to do, productivity monitoring. And again, there's connections between this, right, and the speed up that was happening on the lines, right, in the auto facilities in Detroit in the late 60s, early 70s.
Well, Tommy, we could keep going, and I think I'd like to have you back. Let's wind it up with how about you giving us your overview of the current status of the labor movement in general?
Absolutely. Big question. I think, I think something I'd like to touch on is that we've seen a lot of excitement, right, over the past 2-3 years, right, referring to this labor upsurge. And I think there's been a lot of worker organizing has been a lot more in the news, right? And there are undoubtedly many more worker organizing efforts happening across the country, more union elections happening across the country. And while we haven't quite reversed the tick down, we're very close to doing that. And I think it's within reach, right, within the next couple of years to grow the number of workers who are represented by unions across this country. But I think we need to point to examples like the UAW workers who weren't afraid of forming independent organizations, weren't afraid of taking aggressive struggle, taking the fight directly to their boss. I think making sure that all of our fights for worker justice are rooted in racial justice. I think those three things that this finally got the news teach us are going to be how we get back to a better labor movement in this country. So.
Well, Tommy, I hope to meet you in person on February 29th, 6 p.m. Jobs with Justice, 333 South Ashland for that film festival. And I'm asking you right now if you'll come back on and talk a little bit more about not only future labor films, events, or progress in the labor movement.
Absolutely, Michael. Happy to come on again.
Okay, brother. Keep on doing good in the world. It's great.
Appreciate it.
People.